do we all have to sound the same? Why do we all have to look the same? Why do we have to market to the company and to the executives when we can tell the story of what it is that we do for the day-to-day users?
Welcome to Connect to Market. I'm Casey Cheshire. Join us as we learn from marketing leaders who are driving founder-led growth. We're sponsored by Ringmaster, building B2B podcasts and communities to reconnect you with your audience. All right, we're doing this. Oh man, I'm so excited. To be honest, we almost did the podcast without recording. There's just so much to catch up on. So many changes, so many cool things to talk about. This guest is an absolute leader, an absolute thought leader. I can't wait to just crack open the brain and just learn from her today. So, well, who is she, Casey? Who is she? Well, absolutely a fellow CTM community member. You might have seen her in a breakout, and or maybe you've seen her in a breakout, and now you came back to listen to the pod to learn more about her. This is the way to do it. Marketing leader, thought leader, GTM powerhouse, conference speaker. She is very experienced in experiential marketing, which we will potentially get into. Spoiler alert, very much an influential industry speaker, speaking at all different kind of events, cyber marketing con, you name it. The newly crowned head of marketing at Monad, Valerie Zargarpur. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Wow, this is so cool. We're going to talk about all sorts of things. I can't wait to do this. In order to get this thing started, I need to ask you our first question. But in order to do that, I need to throw on this giant blue foam finger and ask you, Valerie, what is the number one thing that marketers need to do in order to connect to their market?
Okay, so I've heard recently that brand is back. Could not agree more. I think brand is so essential to connecting to the market. But I would like to say that the brand story is actually more essential to the brand than the visual identity that you see, like the logos and the website and things like that. How you tell the story and how it is that you are selling your brand and your product is the best way to connect to your market.
Dang, the story. We get so fixated on the logos and what color. Can I have a different blue? That blue just doesn't make me feel the way I want to feel. I feel, oh God, I hate that. But
Yeah.
tell me about the brand story because you have my mind going. Instantly, I'm thinking, what's my brand story? And I'm sure everyone listening is going, oh, what is my brand story? Do we even tell people our brand? Oh my God, what is
Yeah,
this?
so great story, great question.
Yeah.
You have people in your marketing orgs like product marketers and communications folks and even demand gen people who are doing your ads and your copy for your emails and doing content. But what you need and on the top of that, and this is where either it should come from the leadership of the company or the leadership in marketing, or you collaboratively pull it together. You need a cohesive story, what it is that your product does for the market. What are the problems you're solving? How are you making people's lives better with your product? And what is the thing that you do differently than anyone else? Where is that niche that you fit where you're able to really outshine your competitors. And by being very transparent and open about it and telling it in a way that your buyers can connect to, not with, competitor battle cards and solution briefs and things like that. A lot of that is like marketing fluff in a lot of ways. And they're not the things that allow your buyers and your target audience to connect to you.
So it's like we're following the wrong signals. We're putting priorities in the wrong place. How do we get into this mess?
It's a great question. I mean, so I obviously I sit in a really technical space in cybersecurity. I've been in this space for the last 6+ years. And then prior to that, I was in B2C. So this is where my experiential marketing expertise comes in. I spent, 12+ years in B2C, maybe a little bit longer. And a lot of what I learned in B2C is about connecting to your buyer. And your buyer is one person. So you're really trying to build that emotional connection. Well, I came over to B2B because I wanted to kind of return to my roots of my degrees in information systems and operations management. I wanted something that was very technical, and I wanted to kind of take what I've learned in the B2C market where you can literally do anything. And it's not viewed as strange and came into cyber, which is very, very technical and everyone sounds the same. And I was like, why do we all have to sound the same? Why do we all have to look the same? Why do we have to um market to the company and to the executives when we can tell the story of what it is that we do for the day-to-day users? That doesn't mean that you don't wanna have that executive story kind of on the website and in your marketing, especially in marketing that's targeting your executives. However, your executives they're gonna maybe write the check or okay the procurement, but they're not the ones that are gonna use the product. They're not the ones that are gonna champion the product, and they're not the ones who, ultimately decide to buy the product. It's actually your day-to-day users, and those are the people that you actually need to connect with. Um, and ultimately, they're people, which means you need to connect with them on that emotional level um and talk to them in a language that they both understand and use themselves. Which is, I think especially in cyber, try to use like really technical language to talk about what it is that we do and how do we do it. And ultimately it's gotten us to a point where like not everyone can understand our jargon. Like it it ultimately is hurting us in the long term, in my opinion.
There are these technical considerations, and it's a highly technical sale with sort of emotion weaved into it. Yeah, and I just the thing that you said, and I wrote it down and underlined it. Why do we all look the same?
Yes.
You know?
Oh, man. This is especially true in cyber. It's like you go to, we were just talking about RSA conference before we started this.
Yeah, yeah.
So you go to RSA conference. You said you've never been. I am really interested to hear what you have to say about it after going RSA.
I'll give you the full trip report.
You'll have to give us the full trip report. It's so interesting because you will have these massive booths where the companies are spending like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars on their presence there at RSA conference. And they are right next to other booths that quite literally have the exact same tagline. My favorite example of this, I'm not going to name the two company names just because I don't want to really name and shame them. However, I believe they both have their taglines trademarked, which is really interesting. One, they were right next to each other, and one was your security ally, and the other one was your cybersecurity ally.
Oh gosh.
And it's like they're literally right next to each other, and you're thinking, okay, maybe they didn't know this year, but no, they're right next to each other most years.
Are you serious? They knew and they just were
Still
like,
continue to put the
yeah,
same tagline on their booths together, and it's a little boring. A lot of companies, and especially now with like AI, they all want to say that they're agentic and they do X, Y, and Z with AI, but they all say that they do the same things with AI and nothing is differentiating between the different companies. And so ultimately, this is where you start to hear from bigger brands, like brands that you see are making a splash in the market, that brand is moat, right? Brand is a thing that differentiates you and separates you from your competitors. And so I think it's really, really important to be both thoughtful about the way you're presenting your brand and think about it more from a story, telling a story. What's your go-to-market story, right? I often say this to founders when I talk to them because I transitioned jobs recently, so obviously I've had lots of
yeah.
conversation. But also, I've been lucky enough to talk to a number of founders just because I've been part of accelerator programs and things like that. Um, and the one thing that I like to say in this is like, you don't want to go into the market immediately wanting to be the Miller Lite. right? You don't want to be the beer for everybody, right? You want to be that niche craft beer, like that double hazy IPA. I'm not even a beer person. You know, that double
You're spot on.
IPA,
Keep going. Yeah,
you
no.
know, that like the guys with the wax mustaches and the fixed gear bikes in Brooklyn ride, right? And like that's the beer you want to be. Because
Right.
ultimately when you're a new brand coming into the market, you need to find your people. You need to find your niche, right? I there is a woman, April Dunford. She does fantastic positioning and messaging work. And her books are amazing. If you haven't read them, they're really cool. Um, but she talks about that. It's like, you know, you can't come into the market as a small player, especially many of us in startups and many of us in this like tech space and cyber and everything. There are established players in the market that you're trying to kind of either take a cut of or overtake, right? Well, they have a massive budget behind them, right? And so if you come in and say you're the exact same thing as them, you're not really going to move the needle because you can't be 15% incrementally better than your competitors. You need to be like 15 times better to move. You
Yes.
have to overcome, um, you know, you're basically trying to overcome status quo, and status quo is either your incumbent or and that's if there's an incumbent vendor or them doing nothing, right? That's literally what you're having to overcome because like they could just keep doing nothing and not buy your product, you know? And so it's all about finding a unique way to position yourself in the market and tell that brand story, which is what I've essentially done by taking my experience in B2C and like a lot of what I did in B2C was telling a unique story and doing a lot of guerrilla marketing tactics and doing a lot of influencer marketing with massive brands. Like I did stuff with Nike and Coca-Cola and Vitamin Water and Nando's Peri Peri, you know, as like sort of household brands, but also with non-household brand names. And
Mhm.
the way in which you start to stand out in that market is you need to find a way to tell your story in a unique way. And this includes visual identity. But like I said, I think visual identity is less important than the full story that you're telling. I think it has to all go hand in hand.
What's the first step to craft a story like that?
Oh man, that's a great question. So where I like to start is I actually like to talk to my prospective buyers, right? And so what that means is if we have customers, if I come into a company and they already have a customer or a design partner, one of the first things I like to do is actually watch conversations. Either, you know, a lot of companies they'll record their sales calls and things like that. And so I like to dig into those and see if I can find themes in the way in which they are saying they're using their product. And then I like to really challenge the thought of you think your ICP is this, right? Your ideal customer profile. Everyone thinks their ideal customer profile is a Fortune 500 company and they've got
Right.
more than X amount of revenue and more than X amount of employees. But is that actually your ideal customer? And so I like to challenge that and really look at how the companies are using the product and see if that actually fits in the way we are currently positioning the product. And if it's not, well, then we should reposition and we should actually say, okay, this is how the companies are using that product, and therefore we should position in this way. Um, a good example of this is I was at Jupiter One for quite a long time, left there as their head of marketing before I joined my last company and then, you know, transitioned to this new role. Um, and one of the things we were talking about is Jupiter One had a really interesting, powerful platform that you could basically do anything with. You really had any use case in cybersecurity with it. But if you try to market to everyone and you try to say you can do everything, ultimately you're just spending money after money after money. And you're never actually going to see momentum or movement in the market because you just can't spend enough to get that message to all of the different people that would want the product that you're selling, right? And so it came down to, okay, what are our top 5 customers using us for? How are they using us? And what is it that they find most useful in our product? And one of the things they found most useful was the way in which they could set custom controls, and actually integrate that information into their workflows, so that they could actually see, at the end of the day, whether or not the teams that they were managing below them, including thousands of engineers,
Yeah.
whether or not they were in compliance with some of the internal controls that they were monitoring against. And so when I was leaving Jupiter One, we were discussing, kind of repositioning towards this idea of continuous controls monitoring, which is exactly what the top customers were using the product for. And then it's nice to see that, like, maybe 4 or 5 months later after I left, they did actually go through and position towards that. Because, that's where they saw momentum in the market, and that's where they had really strong customer validation. And so going back to your question of, like, where do you start? You start by talking to the customers. You start by connecting to the actual users and connecting to
Right.
your market, right? Um,
Right.
and having that conversation, talk to them like humans, and just be like, "Hey, how is it that you're using this product? Where is it giving you value?" And also be very frank with them about, like, "Hey, where can it give you additional value?" Because that will also help guide, like, product roadmap, for instance. Um, and so overall, then you're really starting to see the seeds of your go-to-market story, right? And then, from there, you start to build your positioning around it. I use a number of positioning frameworks. I kind of combine my favorite ones that are out in the market. If you Google positioning, like product positioning frameworks, there is a million of them. Oh.
Yes.
And so really it's a function of, like, find the ones that you like, find the one that you're happy with, and then use that to start to position around it. And then from there, you can, extrapolate your brand story. You can extrapolate out, like, okay, what do I want to do in terms of blogs and technical content, and even thought leadership content from your executive teams.
Hey, marketing leaders, it's Amanda here from Ringmaster B2B Podcasting. In today's market, B2B buying is built on one thing: trust. And there's no better way to build that trust than through a podcast that builds connection. At Ringmaster, we help you launch and grow shows that will amplify your brand and can help drive real demand. The best part? We handle all the heavy lifting so you can focus on the big picture. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast for your brand or taking your existing one to the next level, visit ringmaster.com to chat and book a call.
I think when you first mentioned the brand story, I started crafting one in my own mind based on my own past and my own experience. And I love the wake up call to say, no, you have to connect to your market, have the conversation, and let them give you the data points of what then turns into the brand story. So I guess initially I was thinking almost like a historical brand story, like where did we come from? But it sounds like that's not, maybe some of that, but more like
Yeah.
how you help the market.
Yeah, so some of it can be fueled by your historical story, right? So for instance, the last company I was at was Hopper Security. And I came in and they had already had the name Hopper. And I was like, man, there's like a really big travel brand just named Hopper that I'm gonna have to position against, essentially, in terms of, like, SEO rankings and things like that. And so it was important to kind of tell the story of why we actually chose Hopper, or why the founders chose Hopper. And
Right.
and the reason they chose it was because of Grace Hopper, who was a computer science pioneer, and they strongly believed in the power of women in innovation, and they built a company culture around that. They made sure that they were hiring women, not just like, they weren't going out and specifically just hiring women, but they were very intentional in the way in which they did their hiring practices and things like that. And it really resonated with the story itself of why they chose Hopper, right? Why they chose Grace Hopper as sort of this icon. And when we were building out our AI agent, we were basically building an AppSec agent. We named her Grace, and we reimagined who Grace would have been as a young computer programmer, right? And used her as both the voice and the brand or the personality behind the AppSec agent that we ended up building. And so I do think in some ways that historical, thinking about your brand connect to market, why connect to market, right?
Mm.
Obviously that's important. But then having the story beyond that of like, okay, why connect to market? But then also, here's what we do, right? This is
Yeah.
this is actually what value we're delivering to our customer. You've got the community, you've got the podcast. And I know you also do podcasting services like hosting,
Right.
right?
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah.
So pulling those things together and kind of talking about it as a core story. One of the easiest ways I always tell people to do this is like you want to boil it down to a level of like explain it to like your mom or your grandma, like what it is that you do every day, right? And so if you can tell if I can tell my mother who is non-technical, she's completely non-technical to the point where I am tech support. If I can explain to her what my company does every day, and what it is that we're doing in the market, then I can tell a more technical buyer exactly what we do as well.
Yeah, and even as you're mentioning, like, the CTM community,
Mhm.
when people have shared, "Hey, I really love rolling up the sleeves on a topic," or, "I really just love connecting and helping other members, contributing, but also I love just the networking, the
Mhm.
one-on," like,
Yep.
that's from them as opposed to being from me being like, "Oh, this is a roundtable of blah, blah, blah," like, doesn't even matter. It's like, what did they say?
Yes, and that's exactly it, and that's the brand currency. That's your ROI narrative essentially, right? Is you are able to create something that has people coming back, right? So for instance, in Connect Market, I'm just gonna use that as an example, having been to one of the roundtables, it's like you are able to provide uh a lot more to the market than just like, "Hey, come talk to me. I have a podcast and I do podcasting services," right? Instead, what you're able to do is actually connect people who are looking to connect with other marketers in their space and have someone to
Mm,
bounce ideas out off of and ask the question of like, "How do you solve this problem?" Right? And a
right.
lot of us, you know, there is a tendency, and this is probably why B2B marketing can be a little bit boring. It's like we have a tendency to just keep doing things the way we were doing things, you know? And so because we just keep doing things the way we were doing them, over time, those ideas and those processes get a little stale, right? And so it's helpful to have the conversation with both younger marketers. It's helpful to have conversations with sort of like the scrappier startup marketers versus the enterprise ones. Like, how are you solving for X, Y, or Z problem? And getting that feedback with each other and having that feedback loop allows you to continue to improve your processes, but also improve your brand's narrative, right? Because ultimately, like one of the things I also say is you should iterate on your narrative like it's like you're a product engineer, right? So what that means is like you iterate, you get feedback, and then you iterate again. And you just keep doing it until you find what is resonating and what works. It's not going to be right on the first shot. And especially like with AI and kind of like a lot of tools that help you move faster in the market today, you're
Mhm.
able to iterate and change messaging and change websites and do all these things very quickly, right? And so by using that speed to your advantage and using your customers and using prospects and things like that to test messaging on, you're able to really see, okay, what's actually resonating? Like maybe I use my first sales deck as the way that I resonate, that I test these things. Or maybe I use my landing page and do an A/B test on my landing page and see what converts, right? And so there are lots of different ways that you can test that messaging and see if the narrative that you've created actually resonates.
mean, I could chat with you about this all day. Maybe we even just need to have one of our roundtables just be focused completely on this. It just would be fascinating.
Absolutely.
Um, but my next question for you is quite literally, who are you? Who are you? How do you know these things? Right? Can you take me back in time to like little you days? Did you know you were going to be a marketing thought leader? Like
Oh man, yes.
little Valerie days.
Little Valerie days. So I was in high school and I wanted to be a journalist. And so I studied journalism in high school. I was like editor, arts and entertainment editor my junior year, editor in chief my senior year of our newspaper. And I was ready to go to college and focus on journalism. And then I had a medical issue. I had a type of bone tumor
Oh,
that kind of set me back a little bit, so I couldn't go away to college. And I also had to, kind of rethink because I was like, all right, I think I need to go to community college to kind of deal with this locally and everything. And so I got into community college, and I was also working for a chain of watch stores at the time, and I was like, okay, so maybe I'll do business because as much as I enjoy journalism, I kind of like this idea of like solving problems, and journalism to me was more communicating them, right? Journalism
mm,
to me was like less analysis and more just communicating the facts. And I am like, I love to untangle a problem, right? And so as I was in college and working and everything, I really wanted to get to a place where like I had a job that I could, like, untangle an issue or a problem. And so, I ended up studying information systems and operations management. I thought that was really the most interesting of the business degrees to me. And then I wound up in, like, finance briefly, very briefly. And then I started a company, in 2009.
wow.
And so that it was an experiential marketing agency, or it essentially became one. But I started it with a partner, and we built it up to 3 million in ARR, and I divested from it during COVID because I was one, they wanted to keep the business, and I was sort of deciding where I wanted to go next and what I wanted to do. And COVID seemed like a really good opportunity to like life reset, right? And so that's exactly what I did. I did a full reset, and I decided that I was gonna come into like cyber or tech, and I got really lucky. I landed a role within that space, and then I've been here ever since. And my time in experiential marketing, I learned a ton from huge brand teams, at these like Fortune 100 brand names. Like they, they have a very specific brand vision in mind, and like, um, but they're also willing to just do anything, right? And so if you pitch them an insane idea, a lot of times they'll be like, "Yeah, why not? Let's do that." And then I found when I came into cyber, it was like if you pitch them an insane idea, they're like, "Excuse me?" They're like, "You wanna do what?" And ultimately, uh, you know, over time, the market has started to move towards this whole experiential thing. Wiz is a great example of this. I love their team there. They execute
Mm,
amazing stuff. Torque, their monster trucks are not really mine. However, they execute this whole thing flawlessly. Like, they are just so good. And so I'm starting to see this in other brands, like, really starting to, pull in this idea of, like, "Hey, we're just trying to connect to our buyers," right?
yeah.
Everyone says that they do it. Like, you can tackle the same cyber problem 16 different ways, right? And so really it's a function of which vendor they prefer, right? And so if it comes down to which vendor they prefer, it's going to be the vendor that they trust. It's going to be the vendor that they like. They like the people that they work with there. And so ultimately, that's why this like brand storytelling and like narrative voice is so important. And so yeah, I just I came up through this whole experiential marketing, B2C market thing.
Oh, yeah.
And wanted to bring all those experiences into B2B because again, I love a challenge. I love a problem. That's what drives me every day. It's not like title, it's not money. It's just I love a challenge and like being able to tackle something really interesting and have an impact.
Yeah, and I feel like you're just gonna put this new organization, that much more on the map, taking that approach, and the marketing will definitely not be the same. So I can't wait to watch the brand story evolve at
For
this
sure.
place you're at.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be one to keep your eye on for sure. Next question for you is a bit of a hypothetical
Okay.
question, but I feel like you're ready for this because you've founded agencies, you've all these things,
Mhm.
and so are you ready for this hypothetical?
Let's go.
Correct. You see, I may or may not have a time machine over here in New Hampshire.
Amazing.
So let's say you're doing a customer event, a little experiential marketing in near Boston. Come on up north. It's in the backyard, covered in a tarp. Okay. And so we use this time machine. It's a particular kind of time machine where you get to go back in time and meet yourself 4 days after graduating from school. You just got
Ooh.
that shiny degree,
Yeah.
info systems, young Valerie. What do you say to yourself?
That's a great question. I don't you almost stumped me for a second. I'm gonna say something that I say to my daughter. I say this to her a lot actually. Which is, be yourself and stand up for who you are and what you believe in. And the reason I say that is, you know, being a woman in a sort of a male dominated industry can be hard at times. And it's there is a desire to make sure that your voice is heard, but also sometimes, and especially early in my career, I found myself kind of um, quieting my thoughts and opinions and sort of like shaping them a little more towards what the status quo would be or what the executives I was working with would be interested in. And so ultimately, I think I would have grown faster, and potentially even been more successful in what I do just by not quieting that voice of like, be yourself. The right people are gonna like you for exactly who you are. Don't change yourself. Don't diminish who you are. And like, if you've got an idea, like say it. And if you are really passionate about something, like let that passion show. It's okay.
Yeah. Now, the next follow up to that is, do you think you would listen to yourself?
Oh man. I hope so. I was pretty headstrong then too. So I would hope that I would actually like take that to heart. But who knows?
Who knows, right? Oh man. Well, like if people want to reach out and connect with you, where do you want them to reach out?
LinkedIn is probably the best way to get me. I love to brainstorm ideas and like just talk through tricky problems together. And like it's just sort of a passion project, side hustle, not even like a side hustle because I don't make money off of it. I just do it for free. But I really enjoy just like helping people try to solve a problem that they can't seem to figure out. And so if people have questions, they can find me on LinkedIn, Valerie Zargarpur. I'm one of the only people out there with that name. So I should be relatively easy to find.
Well, we will put all of that in the show notes and we'll link to it directly.
Awesome.
And man, thank you so much for coming on here. This has been just a blast. I feel like a master class, but I also feel like we can have you back on like 2 or 3 more episodes just to like on several of the rabbit holes we don't even have time to go down. So thank you so much for coming on
Oh,
here.
you are quite welcome. And I'm happy to join anytime. I've got, you know, we could talk all day about experiential marketing. I didn't even dig into that.
I know this. So well, that'll be part two.
Yeah.
Part two
Sounds great.
coming soon to theater near you. And for those listening, if you learned something, share this with someone else. Share it around the community. Let people know, hey, let's get that brand story created. Let's do it based on connecting to the market and not what your own thoughts are. Man, and with that, Valerie, thank you again.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you having me. This was awesome.
Hell yeah, it was. I agree. All right, everyone. This has been another crazy exciting episode of the Connect to Market Pod. We will see you all next time. And that wraps up another episode. Thank you for joining. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at connecttomarket.com. Connect to Market is sponsored by Ringmaster, creating podcasts and communities that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth.